Hi there, it's Richard Little joining you once again from your land partner. We are on video 79 out of 100. We are, as most of you will know, that are watching this in order, which is the best way to do it. We are in the build phase. We are looking at pre-construction, and today we're going to examine the world of health and safety. So I would like to say at this point that despite what some people say, that health and safety has got ridiculous, etc., etc., it really hasn't in terms of construction. Yes, there's a lot more paperwork, but we've seen so many, and we've seen them and had people working for us that have had accidents over the years, that if the current standards were adhered to or in place at that time and adhered to, some of those people would still be with us, and some of those people, would be in a better place than they are now. So please don't turn off. Everybody should actually watch this video, even if they don't watch the rest. So I'm going to start off with sort of what applies and when it applies. So within construction, we've got something called CDM. Now, health and safety is governed by the HSE, so Health and Safety Executive. There is a massive amount of information on this on the HSE website, so hse.gov.uk. Lots of guidance. If you're not sure what your responsibilities are, there's lots of bits on there, and it's really worthwhile. So to sort of have a little look, so you fully understand quite what your responsibilities are. So different people have different responsibilities. And what I'm going to mostly be referring to today is on what we would call not large projects but larger projects, and what is termed a notifiable project. Now, a project has to be notified to the HSE. Let me think. It is. Let me check my notes. Can't remember the thing. Right. Yeah. Okay. If the project is longer than 30 days and has more than 20 workers on at the same time. So that might not apply to some of the projects that some people are looking at, but also if a project exceeds 500 person days, and those days can include holiday days and weekends, so it's not just 5 days a week, so it's 500 person days. So we're not actually necessarily talking about massive projects here. Maybe your home extension possibly isn't going to exceed that, or shouldn't exceed that, unless it's a grand design, of course. But it's actually most stuff that we're involved with, any sort of conversions or new builds, etc. You don't really need many. We've got smallest project we've got on the moment is 10 units, and that way goes over that. So to give you a bit of an idea, even a single house would probably be notifiable. Not that you're going to have 20 people on site at any one time. You might do at the end, but you will probably be having 500 person days or more. If in doubt and you don't know, then notify. Because if it's not a notifiable project, then a lot of the health and safety law still applies. So for smaller projects, it still applies, and the HSE do increasingly, year on year, have more people doing inspections and drop-ins, and they get their information from all sorts of people. In fact, if you see a bad practice somewhere, you actually owe it to everybody to report them. So it's not dobbing somebody in, as somebody once said. It's actually doing the right thing. If there's dodgy scaffolding, or there's a machinery, and people aren't dressed in the right way, or they haven't got holes covered up, etc. So anyway, we have to be a bit more proactive on health and safety. As you will probably guess, it's a bit of a hobby horse of mine, but so I'm going to try and come back and make it more relevant. So we are talking about notifiable projects, and that's done simple form F10, F10, and it's notified. So on projects, is those sort of size projects where there's an element of design to the project, and there's an element of design to most projects, then we split this into two main roles, if you like. They can be taken by the same party. They don't have to be fully qualified. They just have to be experienced and ideally got the right insurance in place. So we start off with the design element, construction design and management, the D design, M management, and then the management. So what we generally have, or generally known as a principal designer. So you could have any number of people involved in the design, whether it's the detailed design or just the project design. So everybody that's actually involved in the design, really. So one party, one entity will take responsibility and become the principal designer. Now, I'm sure some people will be thinking, what health and safety issues are there in from the principal design point of view? And it's not how you sit down or pick something up if you're working at a desk or whatever. It's not to do with that. It's actually design decisions. So decisions made in the design process can have a massive impact on the delivery of whatever project it is. So they have to have one eye. Can this be delivered in a safe way? Are we designing something, for instance, that needs maintaining, that you can't get to without scrabbling over roofs or something like that? So poor design, in terms of maintenance and the ongoing use of the building. So we've got that principal design role, and as the project sort of moves into going on to site, into the pre-construction we're talking about, and goes on to site, we then have effectively a principal contractor. So it is one person, one entity that is taking charge of this role. So it often is different people, but it doesn't always have to be. And there are a lot of now health and safety consultants that will take on the role, particularly from the contractor side of things, and they'll oversee it. So it's become a consultancy role. You can take it on yourself. You can, as the client, be both principal designer and principal contractor, and take those roles on, or the role of the principal contractor, even if you're not the contractor. So I'm not going to make it any more confusing than that. What you've got to understand is there are two roles that we have to cover with somebody that is suitably qualified, and I would always say suitably insured. Now, ultimately, if you are the client, if you are the person that is commissioning this work, you are the person that is actually, bringing this project together, ultimately you have the responsibility. So what you need to do is make sure that you pass on some of that responsibility. But if it all goes wrong, you are responsible. Yeah, there is no maximum fine on health and safety, and obviously there's well-known disasters, if you like, where there are health and safety issues, and effectively they're going to be looking for somebody to blame. Yeah. Grenfell obviously is one that, massive, terrible tragedy. They will be looking for scapegoats. Somebody's going to be responsible for that. It might be a number of people in point of fact, but actually who designed this and who were the contractor? And obviously everybody's going to be jockeying for position, so it's not me, material suppliers and all that sort of thing. But ultimately, it comes down to you as the client, so you have the responsibility. So please don't take it lightly. And as I said before, if you go on the HSE website, whatever role you have, and this also includes smaller contracts, smaller projects, what responsibilities you have, whether you're the client, whether you're a contractor, whether you're a principal contractor, a designer, a principal designer, a worker. Yeah, there's stuff on there that says what you're responsible for. Now, most of this stuff is as I say, it's readily available, and if you bring in somebody, like tends to happen on projects that we do, so at the moment, and say one project that we've got on site, the architect was the principal designer. That then was handed over to the consultant, effectively, who is actually taking the role of the principal contractor. So the principal contractor's got their name on it, but the consultant is actually doing everything on behalf of. It won't surprise you to know it's a lot of paper record keeping. So in terms of records, all sorts of records that you have to keep. But one of the biggest by far is risk assessments. And I'm sure many people are involved in risk assessments and they get ridiculed. And I have to say there's some nonsensical ones. Ultimately, you've got to have them done. Most sort of types of site, types of project, they're pretty standard. And your consultant, if that's what you use, will have a pick and mix that's relevant, right? Okay, so they're not always writing them out from scratch. You will also find some consultants that will convince you they are, but they're pretty much not. It's cut and paste generally. And those records should be kept from the HSE. Those records are kept for 40 years, because the responsibility of the design and the construction is actually, it doesn't stop when for health and safety. It doesn't stop when a building is handed over. So you could sell it or whatever, it doesn't matter. You are responsible, can be responsible for, that's it, for any maintenance issues and even use of the building. If it's actually found in a later date that it wasn't designed correctly for the use, you can be prosecuted. And HSE, look it up. They're not horror stories, but there are some horror stories behind it, some tragedies, etc. And actually, it comes back down to one person, two people not actually making the right decision. There is also an element of scapegoat, so I understand that. So they don't get it right all the time, but we should not in any way ignore it. Hoping I'm getting that. I don't want to waffle on too much about it, because people get a bit bored about health and safety, but it is absolutely crucial. So if you've got somebody, once you get on site, then you've actually got somebody that's coming round. So your consultant is going to come round, and they're going to be looking for things, and they're actually going to write reports, because that's what they need to do. And they could look at something, and they could show you what we would probably call an improvement notice, to sort of say, look, that's not right. I mean, an easy one is, workers not wearing their hard hats, if you like, or improper footwear. I mean, they're dead simple, but perhaps scaffolding that is not complete, and people are working on it. So it's all about working practices as well. So it's no good having the risk assessments and then ignoring them. Using the incorrect plant to do things. So I don't know, somebody working off of a forklift. There's plenty of videos out there of people working off of a pallet on a forklift. And years ago, that used to be pretty standard practice, but now shouldn't be doing it. So there's plenty of different things, and I'm sure most of you could think of something, and you've probably seen something that, wow, that's dangerous. So we can't get rid of risk out of construction process, because we're using machinery, we're using heavy materials, we're using temporary work, scaffolding, etc. Things will happen. Tower cranes will fall over. Yeah, but ultimately, why did they fall over? There'll be a reason, and somebody's going to carry the can for that. And you don't want it to be you as any part of the process, to be honest. So you've got to take your role. So go onto the HSE website, understand your roles, or understand the roles of everybody, which is quite useful. We're not talking about exhaustive reading here. You haven't got to read all of the CDM regulations from 2015, 2016, whenever the latest ones came in. But it's to understand it. As I say, I can't, I say people switch off from this stuff, but I can't really get across strong enough how important this all is. So remember, no maximum fine. Some records need to be kept in some form or other for 40 years, particularly the risk assessments. Most of your day-to-day records, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that, that's fine. But risk assessments, because you need them, because somebody might come chasing you 30 years down the line. It might not be you, it might be somebody else that's taken that on. So the responsibility doesn't necessarily disappear when somebody dies, okay, either. So if you're doing this through companies and etc., even if the company's disappeared, right, they have got far-reaching powers. So anyway, I'm not gonna drone on any more about it. The point is, you need to know about CDM, construction design and management. A lot of this stuff will be picked up prior to the pre-construction process, as I say, through the design phase. But this is when it all starts coming together, and potentially any handover between the principal designer and whoever's going to be doing the principal contractor role. There's a handover. Sometimes it's the same people. The principal designer, you might engage both of them, so there's a big overlap. It could be the same person. So I think you get the drift. There's any which way of doing this. And as I say, it doesn't have to be somebody that has letters after the name. We would suggest that it's probably somebody that really does need to be qualified. So again, like anything else, don't always go for the cheapest option. You've got to feel safe. That person that's going to be handling it for you, are they taking that responsibility on? Because you're just trying to leverage, the situation and in somebody else. So you're trying to move some of your risk onto somebody else. Yeah. So it's been Richard Little on the relatively dry subject of health and safety. In video 79 of 100, we are getting much closer to being on site, but we still got some other stuff to do. We still got plenty of stuff to do in the pre-construction. So I hope you'll join us again on another video, next video in the series, and see you again.